unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, the production of Souls and Liberty. 62 days. 62 days to go until the election, and things are getting real, especially around the topic of God and religion. And joining us today to talk about all of that are Souls and Liberty fellow contributors Stephen Wynn and Arthur Clareau, who I kind of kid around and call him Inspector Clouseau. And I'm Gary Michael Voris, coming to you from Houston, Texas. All right, gents, I'd like to start us off with this quote from Rasmussen's director of polling. He says, "So I think there's some good stuff that you can see as well, like the fact that Donald Trump is winning among anyone who says they're part of an organized religion. But Kamala Harris is winning big, even bigger among Democrats, among atheists. And she's also beating Trump handily by like 20 points among people who say they're agnostic or not sure what their religion is. And then Donald Trump is also winning with every human being in America, except for people who say they rarely or never attend church. It's like some kind of weird holy war is going on." Guys, it's crazy that now those comments from him, that's the director of Rasmussen polling, it comes at the end of a very long analysis of the potential impact of RFK's endorsing of Trump, which by the way, Rasmussen sees as sort of a gain for Trump in its polling. But our emphasis today is not on the RFK factor, but on that religion God. It's almost a footnote, little thing he just threw in at the end of this very long, extensive political analysis article, and then out of the blue says, hey, God and religion, it's all favoring Trump. Devil and all the atheists and stuff, well, that's over there on Kamala's side. Stephen, your thoughts?
Well, I think our Rasmussen friend is spot on, probably more than he realizes. We are watching a holy war unfold before us right now. And at its base is really a clash of worldviews, Christian versus communist. Trump versus Harris reflects diametrically opposed perspectives on some of life's most fundamental questions. For example, who is the ultimate authority? Is it God or is it the state? The dignity of man, is it rooted in and reflected by natural rights or human rights? Purpose and destiny are we part of a divine plan, or are we merely the products of random chance? Atheists, agnostics, and the rest of Kamala's cabal, they have very different answers to these questions than the vast majority of Trump supporters, and this is reflected in in the life and death struggle, really, that we see going on for the Republic and for all of Western civilization, for that matter. Ultimately, I think it's a question of light versus darkness, truth versus falsehood, heaven versus hell.
Yeah, oh, very good points. Arthur, jump into you. Excuse me. Same question. I mean, that was, you read the article and you're like, oh, the article is actually a transcript of an interview he did. But that is weird. He just sort of pulled this in at the end. I mean, for people to understand, this is a deep analysis of the effect of RFK's endorsement on Trump. And he goes into this it doesn't matter what the outcome of that particular part of it is. It's just paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. And all of a sudden, in the end, he throws in those two paragraphs. To Stephen's point, yeah, Rasmussen may be a little bit more on spot than what he thinks he is, Arthur.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And I think it's something that a lot of people involved in what's going on have realized for a long time as well. I don't think this is going to be news to many Christians or to people who've been paying attention. We wrote recently on Souls and Liberty. I think this brings a good side of it as well. We wrote recently on Souls and Liberty about how one way that we win is in the spiritual warfare. Like it can seem somewhat like a cope or a cop out. Like, yeah, just pray. Just, don't worry about the physical side of things. But in reality, I mean, there's nothing more important that we can do, because as you can see, this battle is spiritual as much as it is within the physical realm, within politics. And like Israel of old, as the West has turned away from God, we've blundered ourselves into this. And I think that plays into how the atheist world and the Democrat world and the groups of people who believe that all of this is man-made and that we can then, by extension, do whatever we want and create whatever we want limitless because we are our own masters in such a way. That's kind of the driving force that's blundered us into where we are. So going back to an understanding of the limitations of the natural law, but also the expectations of natural law, and understanding that God does have his way and he does have a say here, and bringing things back into the spiritual. It was to the point I said earlier there, it was only when Israel returned to God that God saved them. And it didn't matter how. I mean, one guy, they were saved because he was left-handed. It was literally that simple. So it doesn't take much, but we do have to return to him.
Yes, Stephen, when we, following up on Arthur's saying there, yeah, I mean, the names on the ballots are Trump and Harris, and depending on what state you're in, and if a Democrat controls the election commission office or not, then maybe RFK's on, maybe he's not. Maybe Cornel West is on, maybe he's not. Jill Stein, yes, maybe not. I mean, it depends on, what state you're in and, what they're trying to, angle for their own benefit. But in the end, this is Trump, Harris. And while they're the names on the ballot, there's a heck of a lot more going on than just the both of them, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are, they really embody great movements, political movements, social movements, cultural movements. Basically on one side we've got the left, the woke left, who are, with every passing day just seem more and more insane, more diabolical. And then we have MAGA, to put it that way, I guess, who, the Trump supporters may not be, a completely cohesive unit sharing the exact same worldview. But I think underpinning their support of the president is a recognition to some degree that there are absolutes, moral absolutes. There is such a thing as right and wrong, fixed moral absolutes, basically. And it's interesting. I see more and more online people who, they clearly don't have, they have, little to no theological training, for example. But even in their comments, they know something is very, very wrong. They talk about how dark things are getting. That they sense that something has gone very wrong in our society. They may not be able to, diagnose it as, oh, we have turned away from God, but they sense that we have gone astray in one fashion or another. And so I think unless you have pretty much totally given yourself over to the diabolical, you understand that there is a crisis underway and that veering further to the left is no solution.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I mean, we all do here at Souls and Liberty read gobs and gobs and gobs of material every day so we can get on these sorts of shows and write articles and have mountains of information and data in our minds from everything that we do and read and participate in every day. Arthur, when we're talking about MAGA versus was essentially Marxist, godless atheism, communism, they seem to be, the bad guys seem to be very unified around an anything goes sort of worldview. MAGA, as Stephen I think appropriately points out, is a bit of a hodgepodge of different views and everything, but sitting at the top of it is those guys are wrong. Not quite sure why, can't maybe articulate it in theological or religious terms, although some certainly can. But when you're talking about the unity party, which is what it appears Trump's trying to put together, you run into somebody like Elon Musk, for example, who is, somewhat self-professed agnostic, but he's still moving on goodwill, natural law instincts, which the other side just seems to have completely rejected. Over here, they've seemed to have left room for it, although, again, they probably couldn't articulate it that way. What do you make of all of that, particularly in the MAGA movement?
Very good question. I almost don't want to answer that because it's one of those things where there's probably a dozen answers or 100 answers, and it's just like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that.
Yeah.
But
that's what we do. We go in depth.
I think one of the reasons, yeah, I think one of the reasons might just be for a long time, Western civilization was steeped in Christianity. I mean, we are founded on it. It's part of our very nature. There's so much within Western civilization that is the church, that is, the faith, that I think even without realizing it, I think Douglas Murray said this really well at one point a few years ago. He was saying that even those of us who don't know, we still dream Christian dreams. We still do Christian things without even realizing it. Mm-hmm. And I think that over the last, let's say 70 years, obviously, certain parties have done everything they possibly can to remove that from society. Mm-hmm. But if you go back and you watch old movies or you read old columns or old books, there are so many references to these same things that we all care about and that we all hold very dear. And you can see that at one point in time, the civilization was fully, I mean, for all its mistakes, there was a hugely Christian theme within it. I mean, it was the center point of the civilization. So I think that's part of what it is. We still have that echo of Christianity somewhere in our minds. Obviously, Christians, a different story. We of course have that, but for people like Elon Musk, even to be fair, people like Donald Trump, who are, they say they're Christian. How much? There's a question about it, right? But I mean, he was born in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken. He was raised during the time when Christianity was still the center point of society. So, yeah, I think that answers part of it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Stephen. I'm going to flip back to you on this, also on this question of Elon Musk, and look, okay, so he's I don't know if he becomes a self-professed agnostic. He's just kind of referenced, like, I guess I'm agnostic. It's just hasn't really delved into it that I've ever seen publicly. But even RFK. So what do you have here? And then you throw in Tulsi Gabbard. So what do you have here is sort of like the showcase of the unity party. You've got Trump, who is a self-professed Christian, although doesn't seem to have a lot of the sexual morality stuff correct. You've got Elon Musk, who is agnostic. You've got RFK, who's a somewhat badly catechized Catholic. And you've got Tulsi Gabbard. And they all have sort of varying views of the universe and how it works, or they're not sure exactly how it works and all of that. Yet somewhere in the midst of all of that, there does seem to be some cohesion that they at least understand that the Kamala / et al. Worldview has something warped in it, something anti-human in it. And that seems to be the unifying point over here. I don't think it's just make America great again. It certainly is that, but I don't think it's just that, Stephen.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the MAGA movement is really kind of transforming into almost a big tent of sorts. And there's a lot of things that I disagree with RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk on, but I think the fact that they get it in part. I think that's an excellent starting point. I think that our culture has shifted so much against the Christian worldview that we are, faithful Christians are really in the minority. And I think if we were not able to come together with Elon Musk, he's a self-described moderate Democrat, basically, Kennedy, crying out loud. That's democratic royalty. If we weren't able to come together with these folks, we would undoubtedly lose the day, basically. But because they get it right on enough issues that they're willing to come together with Trump, I think there's hope there. I think that, please God, if he wins in November, that can really be sort of the starting point. And at that point, it's up to Christians to push forward with our worldview, with our beliefs, with our code of morality, etc., and try to influence those who have demonstrated that they're open to truth. They're at least open. They will at least question things, basically. Whereas the woke left, clearly their minds are made up. They're unbending. They're unwilling to entertain the possibility that they could be wrong. There's nothing to work with there. But with these folks, there is. And frankly, I find that encouraging.
Yeah, you get this sense that I could sit down, for example, with Elon Musk and have a theological / philosophical discussion, and he would give it a hearing. Would he be convinced? Would he hear things he hadn't heard before and say, let me get back to you. I need to think about that. Yeah, you get the sense that would happen with him, with the likes of Niall Ferguson. Niall Ferguson was one of the major guys involved in a effort here in Texas, as a matter of fact. Some academic elites got together and said the academy, the higher institution of learning, is a complete disaster, so we're going to go start our own. So I came down here to Austin, Texas, not too far from here, a few years ago, raised a couple $100 million, and just began their actual brick and mortar University of Austin, Texas. One of the guys involved in that is Niall Ferguson, been around forever. Reading some of his stuff, you're like, yeah, same thing. It's a different field, obviously, but this is like another Elon Musk guy. You feel like you could sit down and have a discussion with these guys because, as you said, Stephen, earlier, or I'm sorry, as Art said earlier, there's like an echo of Christianity. There's something to work with. Whereas on the left, on the communist side, there is nothing to work with. They reject Christianity. And that's the big difference. It's the embracing of Christianity by really ardent supporters on the right. There's the not sure exactly what to do with this, but there seem to be points that make sense crowd in the middle of it. And then there's the hell no, want nothing to do with that Christian stuff at all. We want to rule against it and get rid of it and throw them all in camps and whatever. Kamala crowd. Arthur, do you see I guess you'd call it sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe here with what's going on over in I'll just call it the MAGA world because everybody understands what that is, but as we proceed talking about it, we're not talking about just the narrow understanding of MAGA, but the larger, wider one we're talking about here. You see some light at the end of the tunnel here? Like, if Trump wins, is there an opportunity to sit down and say, hey guys, let's catechize you. Let's philosophize with you. Do you see that at all? Or do you think it's just like, once they get power, well, like everybody else who gets power?
Well, I think there's 2 points here. I think point number one, just to what you were saying before, is you notice if you've been online for any significant amount of time or having conversations with people online, you'll notice there are 2 different camps. There are the dogmatic who have made up their mind and nothing you say, no evidence you present is going to change it. And then there are the ones who are open to truth. And you can present information and they'll go, okay, let me have a look at it. Like you said, let me get back to you. Mm-hmm. But at least you can tell from the interaction that they're open to being wrong about how what their beliefs are. And those are usually the best exchanges. And obviously you would also want to be that way, right? Anyone who's looking for truth always has some element in the back of their mind of like, well, I might not have all the information, so I'm open. Sure. And I think that kind of categorizes the Elon Musks and that type, from what I can see at least. To the point about MAGA, if they are to get power in November, this is something that I've had I have a wide range of people in my network. Libertarians, kind of more far right, center right, left leaning, a huge group. And I hear from a lot of them that they're tired of voting for the lesser of two evils. They want someone who's strictly of their perspective. And the broader the tent gets, the more they're concerned about where this is going and what happens in November should Trump take power. And what I have come to the conclusion of, or kind of telling them, is like, okay, the alternative is so much worse. So even if you don't get everything you want, even if you get 10%, it's going to be way better than the alternative. I know it's a tired argument, but it is true. Whether you like it or not, that's the case.
Yeah.
But then also on top of that, it's like, well, the idea of leaving everything that you want done to one man and one party is it's a losing idea to begin with. Sure. Because that's just, you're talking 350, almost 400 million people. There's just no way you're going to get exactly what you want out of your federal government. But if you look back at some of the things that people like de Tocqueville were so impressed by in America, and to this day still take place, it was the local communities, the local, like, people building things and not relying on government to do it for them. Mm-hmm. That really was what made America great and still makes it great. And I think that's what people need to be thinking. How can I build on this? Okay, can we get Trump to at least clear out a lot of the hurdles for us to live life the way we think we're supposed to live it? If he can do that, then it's on us to start organizing, to get together, to build, to create that better world that we want. Really quickly here, one example is the abortion argument, right? There was a huge backlash against Trump's position on the federal government taking a particular position on abortion. That was already pushed back to the states after Roe v. Wade was overturned. So the next logical thing to consider would be, well, this is now a state's issue. Let's deal with it at the state's level. If I live in this state and this is an issue that I care about, let me make sure that my state stands firm the way I want it to. And that goes back to the same point, right? It's not, everything can't just be dumped on one person. Please save me. And I'm going to go back and complain on Twitter or whatever it is. We need to do our part as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 1,000%. And it's a very, Stephen, to get your closing thoughts, what you just heard Arthur enunciate there really is a Catholic social principle. It's, subsidiarity. Every problem should be handled in the most local way that it can. And I think all this, constant emphasis on the White House and Capitol Hill and all that. There's been sort of the imperial government has been set up, and that's the sexy glamour one. This is the Supreme Court and all of that. And that's not what the founding fathers, and they would see this right now and go, whoa, dudes, this is the exact government we tried to warn you about. Anyway, wrap up thoughts, Stephen, on the whole topic here. What do you have for us?
I see a lot of room for hope with things moving forward. If Trump can secure the White House in November, I think we have a real opportunity to turn things around. Now, we can't just retreat. November 6th. If he's elected, we can't just think, thank you, God. Now we can, go back to lounging in front of the television or whatnot. The fight will continue. Again, this is an existential struggle for the future of America. And if the Republicans win in November, that really is just the beginning of the fight, because you can be certain that there's going to be backlash from the other side. Again, sure. Kind of returning to how we started this discussion. Again, Satan is behind all of this, and he's not just going to lie down and slither away quietly into the darkness if Trump is elected, if he returns to the White House. He's going to ramp up his efforts in every way that he can, and Christians specifically, but all of those, on the right, I think we've got to be prepared for that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. A Trump win is just the Winston Churchill gave a wonderful comment in response to the Allied landing at Normandy. Once the beachhead had been secured, and it was clear that, by the end of the day, the Allies were ashore and were going to stay ashore. He said, "This is not the beginning of the end. It is not the end, but it surely is the end of the beginning." And I think that's a really good lens to look at a Trump victory through. What you've done, if he wins, is you have secured a beachhead to now begin to roll back against if you continue the analogy, the Third Reich, but in this case, the culture of death. Arthur, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I think you summed it up. You and Stephen both summed it up perfectly.
Thanks for joining us then.
This is your foot in the door.
Yeah.
No, but it's true. This is the foot in the door. And that's all it is. It's not the conclusion of everything. Everything's not fixed now that happens. And it won't be after 4 years either. It just won't be. This is step one. And it has to be step one of probably 100. I mean, you got 70 years, if not more, probably a lot more actually, of everything going the other way. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we can expedite the process, but I mean, think in terms of it took a century to get here. It's like putting on fat, and when you try to take it off, it takes time. However many years you've been putting it on, you got to put in a lot of years to take it off afterward.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and we'll leave that analogy right there. Everybody understands it. We don't need to say another word about it. Arthur, Stephen, thanks, men, for coming on. Good contributions as always. We will see you again, of course, because you're regular contributors and we talk all the time. All right. As we leave you today, a quick thought. Kamala is Obama in drag. She's another case of someone who poses as black, but not really black, meaning not having lived the typical experience of many African Americans. That's what we mean when we're talking about, are you black? We're not talking about this color of your skin, but that's what they're trying to reduce it to. Heck, her family owned slaves. But slavery aside, the question is one of authenticity. She goes around the country switching accents depending on where she is. If it's an area with a large black population, she switches to that urban-centric sort of thing in her speech patterns and her cadence, just like Obama did. If the audience isn't predominantly black, is not, she reverts back to her Berkeley, California / Toronto, Canada speech patterns. Here she is on Monday, first in Detroit and then in Pittsburgh, giving the exact same speech.
You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time. Thank unions for sick leave. Thank unions for paid family leave. Thank unions for your vacation time.
Communists call that code switching, changing accents to appeal to your audience. Funny, when a white guy does it, the commies call it cultural appropriation. At this point, Kamala should just let the N-word fly without the R. Imagine what the media would do if Trump ever did anything like this. The issue is the complete phoniness of it all. That's the issue here. Kamala is not black by the commonly accepted meaning of that label in America, referencing the descendancy of slavery, which Kamala has as much in common with as Hillary Clinton.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
Since one is standing up in front of an ethnic group of which you have virtually no shared experience, and experience is the key here, not just some little trace sample of DNA. Since when is that acceptable, or at the very least not condemnable? It's hypocritical to call it cultural appropriation if someone with no little to none shared life experience with the audience does it, but somehow it becomes praiseworthy if someone whose only significant commonality with the audience is a skin tone, and a light tone at that. The Associated Press, bastion of journalistic integrity, recently hired a black reporter to head up its, get this now, race coverage during the campaign. Dutifully, among his first articles was an apologia for Harris, with zero experience of living the African American experience, the actual African American experience, he starts apologizing for her and praising her for her phony black dialect. He praised her, in fact, for her ability to code switch. Don't you just love how communists create new terms out of thin air to cover up their politics? You wonder if in this fellow's race coverage, again, never really specific about what that means, is he going to cover any of these types of issues. The history of Margaret Sanger targeting the black community. Even Planned Parenthood had to finally admit this truth bomb. How about the disaster of fatherless homes on young black men? Obama himself mentioned this a generation ago publicly. The leading cause of deaths among blacks is black on black crime, not white cops. Is he going to do a story on why many younger black men are supporting Trump? Unless it's to slam them, AP will never touch that story. The near dissipation of religion within the black community. What happened to Negro spirituality? It was a mainstay for generations. How about how black pastors sold out to the Democrats and their congregations got nothing for it? There's actually a couple of books out recently about that. And the 800-pound gorilla in the room, the exorbitant killing of black babies through abortion compared to all other ethnic groups, it's off the charts. If AP wants to devote ink to race coverage, well, there's some jumping off points for you. But alas, as we know, you won't see any of those topics. Just how cool Kamala's fake accent is and how if you don't vote for her, you ain't black. Fortunately, a lot of African Americans are waking up to being screwed over by Democrats. The same Democrats who supported slavery, started the KKK, fought against the passage of the Civil Rights Act with the longest filibuster in U.S. history, and for 60 years have kept blacks in economic slavery. But with indignation, they're going to attack Justice Clarence Thomas, Dr. Ben Carson, Senator Tim Scott, and the other blacks who dare to wander off their plantation. In fact, it was fashionable not that long ago for liberal blacks to slam such men as Uncle Toms and to use the expression, they just passin', meaning they were passing themselves off as essentially white to just get ahead. But when Kamala does this, well, she's just code switching, having to deal in a white world just to act that way just to get ahead. It's okay for her, but when Dr. Ben Carson or Clarence Thomas does it, oh, that's so awful. They're Uncle Toms. The double standards are simply outrageous. It's the same approach when a pro-life man is attacked for speaking about abortion because he ain't a woman and he shouldn't have an opinion on abortion. But when Chucky Schumer, for example, comes out in support of that child killing, well, no pro-abort woman tell him he has to shut up and sit down because he ain't a woman. Race and gender are cover-ups. They're cheap, hypocritical attempts to gain the high moral ground. If only women can talk about abortion, then why attack all the pro-life women? If only blacks can talk about race, then why attack all the conservative blacks? The mark of the diabolical is willful deception in the cause of advancing evil. And for that, it ain't your skin color or tone or sex that matters, but the wickedness of your heart. God love you. I'm Gary Michael Voris.